Hi viewers, welcome to another exciting episode of The AI People, where we share inspiring stories of thinkers and builders who are humanizing AI. Today at the RSA conference, I'm happy to have this conversation with Shashi from Nile. Shashi leads the go-to-market and marketing function at Nile. I'll let Shashi introduce himself and then we'll dive right into it.
Yeah, Shashi Kiran, CMO at Nile.
Can you maybe share a little bit more about Nile, Shashi, so the audience gets the additional context as to what you do and what brings you to RSA conference? Maybe if you can hold it.
Yeah, so Nile, we call ourselves as the world's most secure network, delivered as a service. And so we address the needs for branch offices, campuses worldwide for a variety of industry verticals, whether it's corporate offices, hospitals, financial services institutions, warehouses, you name it. And what we do is we built out a very secure network which is on zero trust fabric, and we built out an ability to deliver operations autonomously and deliver it as a cloud service. And that's sort of essence of Nile, and all of these three are powered by AI, which is the binding glue between them.
And obviously you would have observed some new trends coming out of RSA conference, and also came into the conference with the understanding that the AI landscape is evolving. With that, the security landscape is also evolving and trying to catch up. So can you maybe share what you think is a significant development that is happening right now at the intersection of AI and security?
Yeah, look, AI has been top of mind both in terms of the disruption it's brought about, but also as a tool set for which you can protect. And it's always going to be a battle between attack and defense mechanisms. And what we have done is try to get ahead of that. So at Nile, we believe that prevention is better than cure. And if you build something that is secure by design, because today a lot of the issues that crop up with security is it's a hodgepodge of point solutions, and there's inherent complexity, and it's very hard to operate this. And if you layer AI on top of complexity, if you layer security on top of complexity, the impact that you can get is going to be minimalistic. Whereas if you take the opposite approach of saying I'm going to shrink the complexity, I'm going to layer AI on top of something that's radically simple, insanely easy to operate, then the multiplicity of layering AI on top or security on top is going to be mandatory. So that's a radical shift in the industry, particularly for the environments we deal in. And so what we have done is we've shrunk the attack surface. Today, if you just look at any data point out there, almost 70% of successful breaches are happening at the edge. And why is this the case? Because the edge is where your users, devices and things are, and then you layer in agentic AI bots on top of that. So every user perhaps has 20x the number of things that are around that person that need to be protected, and that could be a source of threat. And so what we are doing is to say, how do we take this huge attack surface for an organization with 1,000 users, 20,000 entities that need to be secured. So we're shrinking that by default, taking the approach of zero trust by design. So it's not another appliance, it's not another element that needs to get managed, it's all natively built in. And the second thing we look at is how do you operate it? Because the operational chain can be a number of different entities, including the IT team inside the company, or it could be a provider outside. It could be a chain of different partners and systems integrators, each of whom has a legitimate role to play, but it adds to the complexity of the operational lifecycle. So what we have done is subsume that complexity where we offer autonomous operations, taking advantage of AI. So that also shrinks cost, it increases productivity, increases the ability to manage change. And so it goes back to what people are looking for, whether it's with AI or with security. These are all means to an end. What's the end? The organization wants to move faster. They want to increase productivity of their people. They want to protect their business risk and reputation. So these are the things that we enable.
Makes sense. So thanks for laying out what exactly your company does and how do you play in the cybersecurity AI landscape. And how are some of your customers, especially the CIOs, CISOs, who might be reaching out to you, attending RSA or outside RSA? What are you hearing from them? What feedback are you getting from them for your particular platform?
Look, I just shared with you the outcomes that they are expecting. Because for any C-level executive, they are playing a balancing act today. So you look at a CIO, they are being asked to increase the organization velocity using technology as a platform. But many of them are resource constrained. Even a Fortune 100 company doesn't have an IT team that can continue to expand. They're looking at how do you shrink the resource pooling with AI acting as a force multiplier. And if you look at a CISO, they're always saying, okay, do I have visibility into what's going on? How do I manage risk? If I can't see what I'm detecting, then how do I manage risk? How do I provide governance and compliance? So in some ways, these are the age-old problems. And today, with the appearance of AI, it's just the degree of dynamic nature of the environment has exponentially increased. So they are now looking at saying, hey, do I bring in another tool or do I bring in a different architecture? And so our thesis is this problem cannot be solved by bringing one more box, one more protocol, one more tool. Because with security, the more links you add in the chain, that chain doesn't become stronger, it actually becomes weaker. So our thesis is that we cannot do it with all of these additions. You really need to look at how do you rethink architecture. So what we have taken is a back to the basics approach, which is very unique in the industry, but we have shrunk the infrastructure that's required to deliver the same sort of outcomes. So today you have wired and wireless as two different entities, controllers, and you have NAC appliances, then you have IoT devices which are all over the place, unprotected, not secure by design. And we have converged all of those into what we call as our zero trust fabric with an explicit deny approach. We recently introduced a set of new announcements where we were the industry first to take an identity-based authentication approach, which compresses NAC, which delivers micro-segmentation in branch and campus environments, lateral security. We announced a slew of new services. So the whole goal is how do you shrink the infrastructure, reduce the surface area of complexity, and ergo reduce the surface area for the attack as well. And then you layer in AI on top, you get that multiplicity on top.
Can you double click a little bit more on the differentiation? How are you setting yourself apart from your competition? I know you touched upon those, but I would like to hear more about what is your secret sauce and how are you doing things differently from your competitors?
Look, it depends on who the competition is, right? And for us, the competition is not a vendor, but rather an operational model. So today, if you look at the rest of the industry, you have technology vendors that are shipping out boxes for wired and wireless connectivity, but they're expecting somebody else to operate it. It could be an IT team within the customer environment, it could be a service provider or somebody else. And that itself causes a bit of a challenge because there is somebody who's building the technology, somebody else that is responsible for operating it. And typically when something goes wrong, the challenge is always to find out where the issue is, which is why a lot of organizations today deal with tickets. They're inundated with tickets that need to get resolved. And this is largely because of the black holes that you have between technology operations. And it also leads to cost increase. Typically for every dollar that somebody buys in terms of buying the technology, they're spending $6 to $7 in terms of operating it over its life cycle. And so these are the issues, which is what we look at as the legacy status quo. How do you overcome that? It goes back to the architectural change that I talked about, where we not only looked at making the technology much more consolidated, unified, a lot of things built in natively as opposed to stacking up point solutions, but we also taken on ownership of the operational life cycle, which no technology vendor does. So we're both the builders as well as the operators. And for customers, now they get the advantage of our technology and our solution being a force multiplier for their IT team. As I said, most of them are having leading IT organizations, so we then become a force multiplier for them. And they suddenly see breaches being cut down by 60-70% because we've shrunk the attack surface. And some of the new things that we announced was the ability to have a blast radius of just one entity. It could be an IoT device, it could be anything that has been impacted from a vulnerability perspective. By design, these are all going to have a blast radius of one, so they don't propagate. So it effectively contain breaches. And if you recall, I talked about almost 70% of the successful breaches coming from the edge. So suddenly you put a lid on top of that, and so they're getting all of these benefits as a result. And so it is a unique model in the industry. And we're in two different magic quadrants. And the interesting part about it is one is a technology box-centric magic quadrant, the other is a consumption as a service magic quadrant. We're the only ones present in the two with exactly the same platform. Every other vendor is either missing, or if they are, it's because they have completely different offerings in those respective vendors. So it's an architectural shift that we're driving, it's an operational model shift we're driving. We're attacking something that's at the root of complexity, and the company is being founded by John Chambers and Pankaj, formerly the CEO and CDO of Cisco, and they have heard some of these issues which could not be solved in the traditional sense, and it required a clean slate approach. So that's kind of where we are on the journey.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shashi, for being with the AI people, and I wish Nile all the very best.